NDSCS Anatomy and Physiology Lab 1, Summer 2023 Brain Dissection Exercise. Here we have the brain. The dura mater is already removed. There's a very thin layer of arachnoid matter and pia matter that you can sort of see right about here. Covers and protects the brain. This portion all across here is considered the cerebrum. The very front lobe is the frontal lobe, controls motor functions. Just dorsal to the frontal lobe is the parietal lobe. That one primarily receives and processes sensory information. Inferior to that on the sides is the temporal lobe. That one primarily receives and processes auditory information. The very dorsal part of the cerebrum is the occipital lobe, right back in here. That the primary function there is to receive and process information from the eyes. All across the cerebrum, you have these ridges in here. The ridges are called sulci, and then the raised portions in between, those are the gyri. Down the middle of the two halves, that is the medial longitudinal fissure. It divides the two hemispheres of the cerebral cortex. The cerebellum on the back here is just anterior of the occipital lobe. It is responsible for coordinating voluntary movements as well as receiving and sending instructions to control muscles. Here we have the brain now ventral side up. Starting at the back here, we have the brain stem, the spinal cord. Then we move into the brain stem, which is made up of the medulla, the pons, and then the middle brain. The brainstem is a connection between the spinal cord and the cerebellum and the diencephalon. Moving forward, here you can see where the optic tracts leads to this X-shaped part, which is the optic chiasma. This is where the right and left optic nerves cross. Moving even further anteriorly, we have the olfactory bulbs, which receive the nerve impulses for scent. Here now on the inside of the brain, we have the lateral ventricles, right in here. We have the third ventricle, right in this area, and the fourth ventricle, right in here, which leads into the central canal of the spinal cord. Inside the ventricles is the choroid plexus, which produces CSF to fill the ventricles with CSF to help protect the brain. Superior to the lateral ventricles is the corpus callosum. It is a large band of nervous tissue connecting the two hemispheres of the cerebrum. Inferior to the lateral ventricles is the hippocampus, which involves the emotional state and converting short-term memory into long-term. Here's the thalamus, which is a sensory relay center. Down below that is the hypothalamus, which is responsible for maintaining homeostasis. The two of these make up the diencephalon. Here we have the pineal body, which is an endocrine gland. It secretes melatonin. And down here again we have the midbrain, the pons, and the medulla, making up the brain stem. Here again we have the cerebellum. You can see the tree-like pattern inside of it called the arbor vitae. The white matter kind of makes up the tree's trunk and the branches, and then you have the gray matter outside of that kind of makes up the leaves of the trees. Here we have a small cross-section of one of the cerebral hemispheres. You can see the white matter in the middle there, and then the gray matter on the outside. That is the anatomy of the brain.